Welcome to the Mind-Gut Conversation, your go-to podcast for exploring cutting-edge ideas in optimal health and the fascinating science of mind-gut microbiome interactions. I'm your host, Emeran. Here we bring together thought leaders, groundbreaking researchers, and innovative practitioners to share insights that can transform the way you understand your body, mind, and overall well-being. Whether you're a health enthusiast, a curious learner, or a professional in the field, this podcast is your gateway to unlocking the secrets of the mind-gut connection. So settle in, open your mind, and join us as we journey into the science and stories shaping the future of health. Today, I will be talking about how lifestyle choices can reduce the risk of stroke, dementia, and late-life depression. This is a timely topic because increasing longevity and particularly increasing the health span are two of the most talked about topics both in science and in the lay media. Encouraged by the surprising success of the GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic and similar drugs, scientists and the pharmaceutical industry are focusing their efforts in developing new miracle drugs that could achieve this goal. The big question is, do we need such miracle drugs to make America healthy again? Or can we achieve this goal by changing our lifestyle? As we age, the risk of developing brain-related illnesses such as stroke, dementia, and late-life depression increases. But what if we could prevent many of these conditions by changing how we live? A major new study by a group of researchers led by Dr. Sanjula Singh at the Massachusetts General Hospital and published in the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Psychiatry has taken a big step in showing how we can do just that. This research pulls together findings from nearly 200 studies to identify lifestyle and health factors we can change, so-called modifiable risk factors, that have the biggest impact on the risk of these three common and often overlapping brain disorders. These brain disorders are not a necessary consequence of increasing age, because there's many examples of people living into their 90s and even hundreds without being affected by any one of those. So why does this study matter? Surprisingly, stroke, dementia, and depression in older adults often share the same biological roots, mainly damage to the inner lining of the brain's blood vessels, known as cerebral small vessel disease. The good news is that many of the same lifestyle factors influence all three diseases. If we target these shared risks, we can prevent or delay multiple conditions at once. And on top of that, it's a topic I'm not covering during this podcast. The same lifestyle modifications will have a benefit and reduce the risk to come down with chronic cardiovascular diseases. Until now, however, it wasn't clear how much each factor contributes to overall brain health. This study changes that by ranking 17 modifiable risk factors based on how strongly they influence a combined outcome of stroke, dementia, and late-life depression, using a health measurement called Disability Adjusted Life Years, or short DALYs, an acronym DALYS. This measure combines years of life lost due to premature mortality and years of life lost due to time lived in states of less than full health, or years of healthy life lost due to disability. The researchers reviewed high-quality scientific summaries, a technique called meta-analysis, published between 2000 and 2023, focusing only on studies that looked at adults without these three diseases at the start. They selected the most reliable and relevant evidence for 17 lifestyle and health-related risk factors and calculated how much each factor increases or decreases the risk of developing stroke, dementia, or depression later in life. They use DALYs, as I said, which measure both how long people live and how healthy those years are. They then created a single composite risk score for each factor, essentially a number showing how much that factor contributes to overall brain disease burden. And here are the modifiable risk factors that most strongly increased the risk of these three disorders. Number one, high blood pressure or hypertension. This was the most influential risk factor. People with high blood pressure had up to 130 times the baseline risk compared to those with normal blood pressure. It's especially harmful for stroke. Number two, high blood sugar, especially for people with diabetes or fasting glucose greater than 126 milligrams per deciliter. The risk score was 94. Smoking, a well-known risk factor, also had a risk score of 91. Sleep problems, less often discussed, but long sleep duration, more than 8 hours, insomnia, and poor sleep quality all increase risk with scores ranging from 71 to 76. Obesity, also a well-known risk factor for chronic disease. People with a body mass index equal or greater than 30 had a risk score of 70. Depressive symptoms by themselves are a risk factor, not just an outcome, but also a contributor to stroke risk, likely due to the effects on inflammation and lifestyle behaviors. Chronic pain, another risk factor, likely linked to its negative impact on physical activity and overall well-being. Another important risk factor, which has often been emphasized and which is probably a protective factor contributing to the benefits, for example, of the Mediterranean lifestyle, social isolation and loneliness. As pointed out by the Surgeon General in the previous administration, we're living in an epidemic of loneliness, and being socially disconnected raises the risk of these three disorders significantly with a score of 53. Perceived stress. So chronic stress adds a risk score of 55. And finally, poor kidney function. So many of these factors are well known, like smoking and obesity. Others are important to emphasize, such as chronic pain, social isolation, loneliness, and chronic perceived stress, which are important to address. Now, the study also identified protective factors that lower the risk, and they significantly reduce the risk of these diseases. So leisure time cognitive activity involving mental stimulation, reading puzzles, had the strongest protective effect with a score of minus 91. High physical activity, regular exercise had a protective score of minus 56. Moderate activity also helped. And then come a few items that are sometimes talked about, but are equally important. So having a purpose in life, being socially engaged, having a larger social network, reinforcing the role of relationships in mental and cognitive health. And surprisingly, not on the top of these factors is the healthy diet. Certainly, eating fruits, vegetables, and nuts helped reduce the risk, while sugary drinks, sweets, and red meat increased it. And also, surprisingly, and somehow contradictory to the latest publications on alcohol consumption, light alcohol consumption, so people who had less than one drink per day had a reduced risk compared to those who never drank. But clearly, heavy drinking is a clear risk factor for developing these diseases at higher frequency. So what does this mean for you? This research gives a clear message. Changing how we live can meaningfully lower our risk of serious and common brain-related illness in older age. These changes aren't just about adding years to your life, they are about adding quality to those years. Importantly, here's what the science suggests you can do to reduce your risk. Manage your blood pressure and blood sugar. Adopt a diet high in fiber and devoid of sugar that reduces or normalizes your blood sugar. Stay active physically and mentally, both physical exercise, regular physical exercise, and mentally stimulating activities like reading, learning new skills, socializing, starting a new career are all powerful protectors. Prioritize good sleep. Both too much sleep and too little sleep, as well as insomnia, significantly raise the risk of chronic brain disorders. Foster social connections. Regular engagement with friends, family, or community lowers the risk significantly. Eating your meals together with friends and family, as is so common in Mediterranean countries, is an important component of that. Reduce chronic stress or the perception of stress and find purpose. Chronic stress and the lack of life purpose increase the risk while the opposite protects your brain. Keep in mind that not everybody has the same stress sensitivity. Clearly, individuals that have a greater reactivity to stress, which does not affect others, poses a greater risk for coming down with these chronic brain diseases. Follow a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, nuts, and fish, low in sugary drinks or without sugary drinks, ideally. Without processed snacks and red meat is the best. I don't even need to mention that not smoking is a key factor by which you can contribute to staying healthy and keep your brain healthy. And then something that's often not addressed is pay attention to hearing loss and chronic pain early. Both are linked to higher risk of cognitive and emotional decline. So this study had, as interesting as it is, and as how much it confirms previous smaller studies and epidemiological surveys, it offers valuable insights, but it has some limitations. Most importantly, it only looked at risk factors which were shared across stroke, dementia, and late life depression, so it may have missed risk specific to one condition. There was also less data available for depression compared to stroke and dementia, and since most studies relied on self-reported behaviors, some data may be less accurate. That said, the research lays a solid foundation for creating tools and strategies to help people and healthcare providers reduce the risk of multiple age-related brain diseases at once. The bottom line, this major review confirms that stroke, dementia, and late life depression, common ailments with increasing age, they share common lifestyle-based risk factors, and that many of these risks are within our control. By addressing factors like blood pressure, blood sugar, physical activity, sleep, diet, and social engagement, finding purpose in life, we can take meaningful steps to protect our brain health as we age and don't have to wait for the miracle drugs that are on the horizon. Is certainly that unexpected success of GLP-1 agonists for many disorders other than obesity and diabetes clearly indicate there are some key targets in our biological system that all these lifestyle factors converge onto. So one is clearly chronic inflammation and factors that contribute to this ranging from diet to depression to lack of activity. So an exciting message, a positive message, maybe for some people harder to do than for others, but clearly earlier you start paying attention to and following these guidelines, the lower your risk for developing the chronic diseases later in life and the more your health span increases. Thanks for listening. I hope this information was helpful to you or for someone you know. I've gone ahead and added the reference to the study I'm discussing in the description below. Thank you.